All right, so today on the Loans Can Be Fun podcast, we have a very special guest. I'm going to let him introduce himself.
So I'm Troy. I'm the owner of Nook and Kranny Home Services.
Home services.
Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah, so
what just changed? Tell me.
So we just rebranded because, the market's shifting and everything. Plus, I kind of seen a need with the real estate agents needing plumbing, heating, and air conditioning.
Very true.
Techs that have
That's one of
super
the biggest.
access. We can carry if the sellers need repairs, we can wait till closing to be paid. So we shifted, and so now we do home inspections, mold remediation, plumbing, and heating and air conditioning.
Holy crap. All under one roof.
All under one roof.
Okay.
That's amazing.
And I've had Troy do inspections on my own stuff, a couple different houses we looked at buying, and very thorough. That was one thing I noticed. You guys had all the bells and whistles. So for people who don't know what home inspectors do, go through what you look at, what things you check.
Okay, so, home inspection, basically we like to say our home inspectors of jack of all trades, master of none, right? So we start, with the roof. We look for missing shingles, broken trusses in the attic, missing insulation, whether or
What
not...
causes a broken shingle or a broken truss in an attic?
A lot of the time it's when they set it and when they built the house, or over time, if we get a lot of snow, the snow load will compress down on those trusses and crack them and stuff.
Yikes. Okay.
So it's a lot of stuff. One of the biggest things that's hard on trusses is when people go in and say, "Oh, I'm sick of these asphalt shingles. I want to put the clay tiles or the cement tiles."
And that's heavy.
Yeah, and they don't compensate for that weight, and then it compresses down and it breaks them. We actually see that quite a bit.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, as a homeowner, you may not think, "Oh, I should talk to somebody about the weight on that thing." You don't necessarily think about that.
Well, one thing we always like to jokingly say is, "When's the last time you was in your attic?"
Never.
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 Yeah, people don't get up in there, and a lot of times we see like the fans in the bathroom. We call them fart fans, but that's not what they are. But they come disconnected, and so when you're in there showering and you turn that on to get rid of that moisture, now it's just dumping all that moisture in the attic.
Oh, geez.
And then now you have a mold issue because it's hot up there in the summer, and so there's a lot of things that can happen just. With age and insulation, as it settles, it loses its R value. It needs to be fluffy to be.
So for those of you who don't know what an R value is, it's kind of like how the higher the R value, the better your insulation is, right?
Yep, absolutely. So, as it settles, it loses its R value. So we can tell you, hey, it's time to get new insulation.
And they can just blow that in.
Yeah, and there's
easy.
actually a lot of good rebate programs through like Utah Power
I did
and
that
Light.
myself.
The Rocky Mountain Gas Association's got a bunch of rebates. So basically, it doesn't cost you anything.
Right. No, we actually did that on my very own house because we had good insulation. It was a fairly new house, but we could have better, right? And there was rebates, so it made it worth doing. So I don't know if you went through all your services, because I know for me, you actually caught something on an inspection for me for a cabin that I was looking for up in the valley. I think it was maybe Eden or Liberty, something like that. Well, you had done the inspection on the home prior to me getting there. And when I went to the second floor of this house, I could feel the floor actually bounce.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not normal. And they said you had done the inspection, and they told me that you said it was okay. And I was like, I know, Troy, I'm going to call him.
Yeah.
So I called you, and you're like, I did not say that was okay. So there's things like that come up, and that house actually needed like brand new foundation and like pylons into the ground to
I think they ended up. I think we went back after you looked at it for the people that bought it, and they ended up putting like 22 helical piers in.
Yeah, it was going to require a ton of work.
And it's just one of those things. And people ask me all the time on helical piers, and what that is they'll take and they'll drill down into the earth till they hit bedrock, and then they jack the foundation back up. So they can be anywhere from 20 feet to 200 feet deep.
Gosh.
It just depends on where they hit solid rock.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be scared of a house with helical piers.
No, but that house didn't have that.
Yeah.
And it was sagging, and you could feel it. It was creepy, and it was a nice location, all that stuff, but that was definitely where a home inspection saved me a crap ton of money, because I guarantee those helical things did cost a small fortune.
I think it's based on footage, and I've heard they can be anywhere from $1,500 to $10,000 a piece.
Like per pillar.
Yeah.
Dang.
That's why I was like, I'm not getting into this. So yeah, so Troy has actually saved my butt a couple times, and then other times, we just decided not to buy a house, but I know that they look at all systems in the house, the heating, the plumbing, as best you can.
I think if I was to stop and say, what's the most common thing we find?
Yeah.
I would think it has to do, whenever you have water in anything,
Water
it's
is
always,
like the biggest issue,
it
I swear.
And it's whether it's coming through the foundation or through a crack in the stucco or whatever, any kind of water, because it just compounds into a bigger problem. And I think water intrusion or a water leak is probably the number one thing we see.
Yep.
And then I would think the number two thing, and a lot of people don't stop to think about this, but we offer a service to camera the main sewer line.
To see if there's any roots or whatever.
Yeah, and you know what? Honestly, that's the largest expense to a homeowner is to replace that sewer line. We've got a deal going up in North Ogden where the two houses, the contractor bought these and he's flipping them, and he bought them both. Well, the sewers tie together.
Oh, wow.
And one sewer's bad, and the city and it's on 89. So the city and the state got involved, and they're making us separate the two sewers.
Oh, no.
And what should have been, an $8,500 repair is now $52,000.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Sewer stuff is not cheap.
It's not. And,
prevention with that stuff is huge, and making sure that it's taken care of. But man, yeah, it's not cheap.
It's not. And, we only charge a couple $100 to camera a sewer.
Yeah.
And it's like, invest that money because you never know what's there.
Yep.
And we always jokingly tell people, it's not a fun video to sit and watch with popcorn or whatever, but at least you know what's going on.
Yeah.
And even if there's roots in it, we just tell them, you just need to, like, once a year have somebody come out and cable it and get rid of them
or whatever.
And then you shouldn't have any issues.
Yeah.
So it just depends, We also do a lot of methamphetamine testing.
Yep.
And meth is like really prevalent here in Utah.
Oh, that's what actually has surprised me when people do meth tests, how many positive meth tests we get. It's just kind of like mind-blowing to me.
We can dive into that. The reason why, too, is because the national average for meth is actually 4.0.
Okay.
But in Utah, we've decided to drop it to 1.0.
Okay, so it shows up more often on the tests.
Yeah, it shows more often. And literally, if you was to talk to Ann Atkins from Meth Mob, she'll tell you at 1.0, you'd get more sick chugging a bottle of cough syrup than you would off the residue of the meth.
You
in
still
your
don't
house.
want it. But
No. And so, as a joke one day, Ann says, hey, let's pull one of the floor mats out of your inspection vans. So we did, and we tested it, and it came back at like 250.
Oh,
and I'm
my
like,
gosh.
what's that from? And she goes, it's just from the contact of being in houses. And so, like,
Oh, my gosh.
if you're listening to this and you're a real estate agent, never wear the shoes that you show houses on in your own house. Like, I kick my boots off in the garage at night because I don't want to track that into my house.
Oh,
because
my gosh.
it's
You
just
know,
a contact.
what's been there.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
my
so
gosh.
it's like, holy crap. It was like eye-opening, and she's like, it's just common. And, somebody could just rub up against you, and
Right.
that residue could now be on your coat.
Right.
And it's just very prevalent in the state
my
of Utah,
gosh.
but the reason why is because we
have a higher standard.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, because we've had a couple properties where people had to, do the remediation and all that stuff. And it takes a while, and it can make a contract go 3 weeks to a month longer. I had a situation. I want to know what makes a meth test come back with a false positive, because I had that happen on something, and I turned the lady into Childhood Protective Services or CPS, whatever it is. I turned her in, and it was a false test, you guys.
So
I felt
it's
so bad.
A lot of that's how they do it. We have Ann come in. So as a home inspector, we don't have to be certified to do. You can just do meth testing, right? There's no this is how it has to be done. So I get with Ann, and she comes in and teaches my team how to do it to the state standards, because as a licensed mitigator, she has to test a certain way and in a certain area of the house.
If she teaches you guys how to do that, then.
So she taught us, and she said the number one thing is, most guys, when there's a false positive, they don't put the gloves on. They don't worry about what they're touching. They'll touch other things instead of just focusing on the test.
I mean, they touch the meth in their truck.
Right. Just go out and grab your steering wheel. It's probably all over it,
gosh,
So that's what causes a false positive, when they're not actually following the parameters they should. And that's kind of frustrating that it's that, because that
it ruined
causes
the contract.
It causes a huge mess.
Yeah.
And it all boils down to somebody not doing what they should.
Yeah, she was renting the house in the basement, and honestly, it looked like a hoarder's house. And the kid was sleeping on a mattress on the floor and looked like he hadn't had his hair brushed. So maybe it was okay that I called them, but I called them because of the positive meth test, and it wasn't positive. They came back and did another test, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, those situations are bad no matter what. We see them a lot. When I'm in people's houses, when I'm a plumber, it's hard. It jerks at your heartstrings when you see little kids in those situations.
And because honestly, he should have been in a better situation than that. Now, she probably loved him, and you know what I'm saying, but just it didn't look healthy, and things like that. Okay, so before we started this video, you started talking about flipping houses and realtors flipping houses and some of the issues that you have seen there. So kind of tell us a little bit like what you have seen on that end.
Okay, so full disclosure, this wasn't a real estate agent, but it was a company that was flipping houses.
Okay.
And they got to the point they hated us so bad they would try to stop us from doing inspections on their
because you were narking on them,
on their flip houses, just because it was costing them so much money because they were just doing a really crappy job. And one of the things that we caught on to early on is they would go in and if there was mold in the house, they just paint over it.
Oh my!
Is that
goodness.
bad, Troy?
Yeah, and I actually ended up in court as a professional witness against them for them doing that, and it actually caused a bunch of health issues to a kid that moved into the house that had asthma.
Yeah.
So it was like a big deal. And so once that happened, I'm like, okay, we got to get serious when we're
doing
on
something.
this particular group's houses. And then it got so bad, they actually tried to stop us from doing inspections on them. And they would call and say, you can't go in the house, you can't do the inspection. And I'm like, well, unfortunately, the buyer's the one that decides,
not
it's
you.
part of their due diligence. And so we had to fight that. I actually had to get a couple of broker friends of mine involved to help me like navigate that they can't keep me out of those. And
that's crazy.
Now we don't see them very much anymore, and I'm kind of glad.
I know who you're talking about because when we were discussing that and you said the name, I'm like, that was the exact name I was thinking of because I actually heard people say don't buy it from them. Yeah. So kind of crazy. We're not gonna say names. We're not gonna do that kind of stuff.
No, I'm just kidding.
But okay, so you do the home inspections, and that usually like you do the home inspections, but there's times where you have to do tests like meth, radon, mold tests, and some of those take a few days.
Yeah. And if people will just tell us what their due diligence time period is, we can actually rush them at the lab. And all I do is whatever the lab charges me to rush them, I just pass that on to the client and say, okay, that's what it is. We get that totally. And one thing that I do is I actually have one full-time radon tech. She goes around and sets the radon monitors 2 days before the inspections. And if there's testing that needs to be done, she does that testing at that time, whether it's meth or mold. And that way we can get a 2-day jump on the testing for people. And so we're trying to do that. And it took agents a long time to kind of get comfortable with us doing that because we'd need 2 appointments.
Yep.
Like we need one 2 days before.
And then I got to go get my gear.
And then one for the inspection. And they couldn't but once we started explaining, hey, this is what we're doing. We're trying to make sure that we don't hold up the transaction.
Right.
Things started going a lot smoother for us with that.
Can you tell our listeners like why, what radon is and kind of like with meth and mold, kind of the health issues that come along with these things and why it matters?
Sure. So radon, and I'll tell you a personal story. So I'm really an advocate for radon because I just lost my mother-in-law to lung cancer and she didn't smoke a day in her life. And I watched her go through that for 2 years and then she finally passed away. And when I talked to the oncologist, he says, I would imagine it was a radon issue.
My goodness.
And
radon comes from?
It's from the granite as it breaks down under it's like the backfill that they put under your house, the rocks. As that granite breaks down, it releases that radium gas, which is basically a
carcinogen.
Yeah, it's a carcinogen, and you can't smell it, taste it, see it, nothing.
You would never know.
And so, and it settles in the lowest living area of the house. And so, where do you put your kids for 20 years of their lives? Or
your mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. Never mind.
So
I don't know what you're saying, Trevor.
So, it's an easy test to do. And honestly, in the scheme of things, to mitigate a house for radon is like $1,500 to $1,700.
So how do you mitigate it?
So a company can come in and they'll drill a hole in the slab in the basement and they'll put a pipe down in the slab and then they put a fan outside and they pipe that radon gas outside and then into the atmosphere where it can dissipate or get watered down, basically.
But how does that work if you have you're all on granite or whatever that's causing this? How does one pipe in the middle really do it?
So that's a great question. Sometimes they have to put 2 or 3 systems in depending on the house.
So do you have to do it multiple times? Because if the granite's going to continue to break down.
That fan has to stay there, and you just have to. So the EPA says once a system's been installed, a mitigation system.
Oh, it's a full system. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to test every 2 years to make sure that system's staying active.
Got it.
I can tell you a story.
Is it newer houses? Sorry.
It's all houses.
Then I probably need a radon test. Then.
There's no rhyme or reason to, like, if your neighbor has radon, you may not. there's no
Weird,
really
just
rhyme
the
or
makeup
reason.
of the dirt.
Yeah, it's just there's no reason.
Okay, call me.
Yeah. The only thing I can tell you about radon is the higher you get up on the mountain and then the deeper you get in the ground up there. So I can tell you a story. We did an inspection for a Jazz basketball player. You know Derek Favors?
Yeah.
I don't
Totally.
because I'm out of the loop.
Yeah,
Sorry, guys.
so we did his house when he moved here to play for the Jazz, and he lived up on the hill in North Salt Lake, and he had a basketball court in the it was 4 stories down basically, and I set a radon monitor down there, and I went and picked it up, and it came back at 99, and I'm like, what?
What's normal?
Like 4.0 is the limit.
Oh my
And this
gosh.
came back at 99.0. And I'm like, okay,
Yikes.
something's wrong with my monitor. I look at the calibration date and it was in calibration. I'm like, that's a bad test. So I said, hey, I need to set them again. So I set 3 monitors down there.
And they all came
back that high. So they had to put a radon system in his house to get rid of that radon. And they ended up putting,
Holy crap.
I think they put 4 systems in that house just because of the square footage. It was like 12,000 square feet or something.
It's no big deal.
Yeah, some
Totally fine.
huge number.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was, and I think it was just because he was so deep in the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, and especially with all the ground out there, because I'm like clear out in Taylor, and it's just dirt, but I kind of want to get that tested so I can
It's
see.
all those animals in the swamp that are out there.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's radon testing, there's meth. Obviously, meth is a drug, and you don't want that, in your kids' systems
so
and things like that.
The radon, or for the meth, the thing about meth is once it's been in the house, you can't paint over, you can't encapsulate it.
It doesn't go away.
It keeps leaching through, and they actually have to scrub the walls when they go in. And
Yep.
I went, Ann invited me one time to see kind of how they do it, and she walked me through the house, and it's a process. It's basically they scrub all the walls. Anything permeable in the house has to go.
Yep.
So like couches, carpet, even blinds with the little strings, because the strings are permeable.
Oh
that
my
all
gosh.
has to go. So when you stop and look at what's permeable
so
in
much.
your house,
Everything.
it's like, holy
Like,
crap.
yeah.
And then
Every
they have to
single thing.
scrub everything, and they have to scrub it like 3 times.
Yeah.
They have
That's
to go in
crazy.
and wash it, and then they have to scrub it, and then they have to wash
And
it again.
test. Yeah.
And then they have to have a clearance test. And one of the misnomers about meth is the lab where we do the sampling down in Salt Lake, where we take our samples, us as a home inspection company, and even the agents, buyers and sellers, are not required to say anything to the health department about, hey, there's meth in this house. It's actually up to the actual owner of the house.
That's messed up.
And the only person that goes to the health department in the whole scenario is the mitigation company.
Mm-hmm.
So Ann has to go pull a permit with the health department, and then the health department will look at the levels and say yes or no that people can stay there.
Oh my
so
gosh.
about 1 in 5 they make them leave the house until it's cleaned up because of the levels of it.
Otherwise, they just stay there.
Holy cow.
And
That's messed up.
At first I thought, every rental I'm going to find. We actually find more in single family homes than we do rental houses, which shocked me.
Right.
But that's just how it is.
That's
And then if
interesting.
you break down the demographics of who's using meth, the number 1 user of meth is a single female.
I was going to say.
With kids.
I've heard that, yeah. Well, kids are hard, okay?
Right.
I heard heroin's a big, favorite of school moms and
Yeah.
stuff.
And then the
do it.
second highest user is a construction worker, but if you break it down even farther, it's HVAC techs. So we've actually found
Weird.
meth in brand new houses that nobody's lived in because it's on the tech and he's putting the system in your house and then he
HVAC.
turns it
That's
on
crazy.
and then it goes
And
all
it
through
sucks
your duct.
everything.
Yeah,
Oh.
go through your ductwork. So,
And then they have to mitigate a brand new house. Oh my gosh. Okay, now talk about mold.
mold is
Disgusting.
Yeah. And
I like
honestly,
blue cheese. Does that
So-
count? I'm just kidding. I don't like blue cheese really. I like feta though.
so what do you think's the worst mold?
Black mold?
I've heard black mold, but
No, it's not. It's not, but it's the most common.
right.
So
I don't
who-
know the types of molds. Do you want to do multiple choice?
Yeah. So who really makes the most money in a mold situation? It's your-
Sheetrock. I'm
It's
just
your
kidding.
disaster cleanup
Yeah.
companies, right? Because they come in and bill your homeowner's insurance. So I give them props for the marketing
Yeah.
because they have done an absolute phenomenal job of making black mold the enemy.
Right.
And it's just the most common.
Okay.
And that's why they've done that is so that they can go in and tear your whole house
You've
apart.
got black mold.
Yeah, charge your homeowner's insurance thousands and thousands of dollars when it really
Yeah.
doesn't need to be. And so
Interesting.
mold, there's like
Hmm.
no line in the sand with the EPA. They haven't said this is what a high number is because mold is based on your immune system. So your immune system may handle more mold than my immune system.
Well, I know some kids can't handle it hardly at all because of asthma. And
if there's any kind of respiratory issues, you should just check the house for mold.
Yeah.
And what's funny is a lot of companies don't understand that there's mold in the air every day that we breathe. Like if you watch the pollen counts on the news.
I'm allergic to mold on the allergy test.
Yeah. So if you watch the pollen counts on the news, it's always on there. Mold's always on there. So we take an outside control sample so we can see what's in the air that day. And then we sample in the house. And then that way we can say, okay, outside it was this number.
Right. And
inside it's like either higher or lower. That way we know kind of what to judge things, how to read that mold sample in the house. So.
For me, it's interesting because I am allergic to mold on the test. And so it's like on rainy days or when it's really damp, that's kind of when I have a little bit more allergies than other times. But that makes sense because mold likes moisture, right?
Yeah, it does. And I always jokingly say, whenever the wind blows out of St. George, we get a lot of mold. It's because all the old people down there. No, I'm just teasing.
No, that's amazing. No, it's true though. It's true. I mean, just kidding.
Every old person's home kind of smells the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's usually like roses and mothballs.
You walk into an old person's house in the wintertime and it's like 412 degrees in there. And the windows are sweating. So they all have mold in their house because of the condensation. You know, it's
trying
just
to keep
one of
warm.
those. Yeah, it's just one of those things.
They need a Loans Can Be Fun blanket. I'm just kidding.
They need something.
Okay, so, and a lot of kids are like the mold. How easily is that fixed?
Simple. The way we do it is we use an all-natural product that's enzyme based.
Okay.
And so the old adage is, just clean it with Clorox. Well, Clorox is mostly water. And so the analogy I like to use is if you mow a dandelion off, did you kill the roots?
Nope.
It just comes back double, right?
Right.
Same thing with Clorox. It'll kill the surface, but it won't kill the roots. Well, our enzymes will go in and they'll eat the roots and they change them to an amino acid, which is harmless, right?
Okay.
The enzymes that we use, if we fog the house, they'll stay living for up to 2 years. And they'll continue to fight that mold if it ever comes back.
That's so cool.
And we can either wipe it on or we can fog the house. And if we fog it, we use a wet fog process. And the foggers break the product down to such a fine micron that it will actually penetrate permeable stuff.
Wow.
So it'll get behind the sheetrock paper. It'll get, it'll penetrate all that stuff to kill that mold. And it's really a good product. And I did a lot of homework before we decided to jump into that. And I didn't want to use harsh chemicals.
Right. Yeah. Because that's always my big thing with people coming to do my house, spraying for bugs or other things like that. I'm like, I don't want it around my kids.
Right. And so
I want it for me because I'm sucking up radon for fun.
Right. And it's, you got to be conscious. And my big thing was, would I spray it in my house with my grandkids and, with my own kids? And it's like, no, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't do it.
And then I found this product, and the product was actually approved by the EPA to kill mold. So it's backed by the EPA. And it's funny because during COVID, back in 2020, I went on a vacation with my wife and I got on the plane and I'm like, I recognize that smell.
That's what they were using?
What is it? And I said, what do you guys, they said, we're disinfecting everything. I go, I get that, but what is the product?
Yeah.
And they handed me the bottle and I'm like, holy crap, that's my mold stuff.
That's my stuff.
So it was the third thing that the CDC put on the list to actually kill the COVID virus. So I was like, holy crap.
Because you can sanitize homes too, right?
Yeah, we absolutely can.
Yeah, that was something that was surprising to me where I was like, that would have been a great idea at different times.
We actually did quite a bit of it. We had an office call. They had a huge COVID outbreak in this real estate office, and I went in and sanitized their whole office and everything for them. Just peace of mind and make everybody feel better. And we did a lot of houses. That freaked a lot of people out.
Oh my gosh, that was such a weird time and
terrifying.
I think we're all a little bit traumatized by it. And
I don't think we'll ever get over it.
No,
actually.
there's things that are still just weird as heck because of it. But yeah, I remember you talking about that and I was like, what a cool idea. I didn't even know that was possible. I don't know why. It's always like surface, but I think it comes back to you're always nervous to sanitize your whole house. It's like, even when I've done a bug bomb, I'm like, I don't really like the fact that that's on my,
it leaves that residue.
Yeah, I'm like, that just doesn't seem.
Yeah. And that's the nice thing about the enzyme-based product is it's
natural,
it leaves a residue, but it's not like something that if your kid grabs it, it's not going to hurt them. You know what I mean? And the gentleman that created the product, he actually, one of the videos I seen, he actually stuck his finger and licked it, and he's like, it's safe to and I'm like, well,
but I still wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't
just
either.
Anything.
But it's just like
that's
it's
not true.
Just like
what is it? The lick it stick? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, with the powder, with the candy.
Fun dip.
The fun dip. There
fun
you go.
dip.
Yeah. Yep. The lick it stick's
thing.
the stick, right? I think that's what it says on it. Anyway, sorry.
No, you're
As
good.
we digress.
But it, where it's all natural, we tell people, look, we don't use any chemicals. And the thing about it, if you really watch a disaster cleanup company, they don't treat the mold. They just cut the sheetrock out and get rid of it. They don't do. And the sad part is what happens when they come into your house. They pull your carpet up, stick fans in there, and they start blowing all of those mold spores. They turn your furnaces on, your air conditioner.
Oh, we had that exact thing. It actually caused more mold in my parents' cabin.
Yeah, so it just like spreads that instead of going, okay, let's lock this down. Let's get the fog in the air. Let's kill all the mold spores in the air. They don't do anything. They go, oh, we just painted it with kills.
So do you come in and do that for people?
Yeah.
So if somebody has a flood or something like that, they should call you guys.
Yep, we can come in and fog the whole house immediately. Well, they need to get the water cleaned up.
Sure, they need to get that out of there.
And then we can come in and fog the house, and I'll actually fog the ductwork as well for the furnace. So one of the things that we found that we do is we'll find out what size filter they have, and then we buy one of those filters and soak it in our product. And stick it back in the furnace and then turn it on.
Yes.
And now it's sucking all 70% of that air back through the house. And then when we're fogging the house, we'll fog extra heavy at the return air, so it's sucking it back through the ductwork, and we'll pull all the heat registers up and go down in the heat registers. And so we try to do a good job for people.
Well, and that seems like you've thought it through and how to really get rid of it, which is huge. And I think a lot of people just do the bare minimum, unfortunately, in a lot of businesses.
Yeah, and the nice thing about our product is I tell everybody I'm like way less than a disaster cleanup, like a third of what they charge.
So do you have other people, like connections where, like, let's say they have to take sheetrock out, things like that, you can just help them get that taken care of?
We'll cut it out too, but I won't put it back. I mean...
Oh, nice, Troy. That's really nice.
I'll tear down your house.
People, I'm really good at cutting it out, but you don't want me. I suck at putting it back.
Oh my gosh, that is one thing that I will say.
An art.
You always hire a professional for sheetrock.
Yeah.
I don't care what you think about your skills, because I feel like I'm pretty good at most things, and then when I try sheetrock, I'm like, no.
One of the things when we're doing a home inspection, if we can tell if the homeowner's finished the basement themselves, and we'll always put in our comments, it appears that a non-professional has finished the basement.
You do it just for fun?
No, just because you need to know.
You need to know that,
right? And we don't do permit research,
right?
And we're kind of wanting people to go like to the city. Was a permit pulled?
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else that you think people need to know why it's so important to have a home inspection? Like,
I know agents look at us as the devil, and I get it. We stand between them and their paycheck. But our end goal is we really are there to protect that buyer and just give them an educated view of what they're getting into. And we walk a fine line because inside that house, those four walls, is a ton of emotions. So sellers can they get offended easily because who's this stranger? Who's this dick in my house that's telling me all this stuff is wrong, right?
Yep.
And so we walk a really fine line. And so, but we truly are there in the best interest of the buyers to let them know what they're buying.
Well, and I just went through the process of selling my house, and an inspector came through, and they named some things that I was like, that really doesn't need to be done. It makes people feel better, right? And we all know that. But there were other things where I was like, that would have been nice to know when I did my house. Yeah. There were certain things with the water heater, and there was another thing with some plumbing thing where I was like, and with the furnace, it was like something about having sediment. There was no sediment trap.
On the gas line.
On the gas line. Yeah. I had no idea that was a thing. Yeah. And I've lived there for 13 years, you know what I'm saying? So there's just things like that that the average human buying a house doesn't know.
And we tell everybody, it wouldn't even hurt just the average homeowner to give us a call and let us come and do an inspection on their house and give them a punch list. Here's things that you need to do, like maintenance items, because most people don't understand that. And one of the jokes that we have at our shop, at our team uses all the time is, with the new generation of people that were buying the houses, not only do they not know what a hammer is, they sure the heck don't know how to use it. And the point of that is we need to be helping them take care of their house, right? Here's a punch list. Here's things to do. Here's trusted people that we've worked with.
Well, and that helps them if they ever go to sell their house too. Those things are already done, and the expense doesn't have to be like a crazy, now I need $10,000 to do this because I've done it over
whatever.
And
it's the old analogy, a small drip becomes a huge flood over time.
Amen.
And if you can catch it early and take care of it, and then you won't have to worry about mold remediation and all this other stuff that we've talked about because you've handled that problem. And it just boils down to maintenance.
Exactly. So I want you guys all to know, like, when I buy a home, I get a home inspection. I just bought a new home, and that wasn't, I probably should have anyway, but I'll have you come by and do my radon.
We find more on new construction than we do existing houses.
Anyway. Oh, that makes me feel stupid. Okay, but I have used Troy several times, and I would recommend him to people. And there are good companies that do this,
There's
but
a lot.
They're offering plumbing and the HVAC stuff.
One-stop shop.
One-stop shop. That's really nice.
And I know that there's a lot of pain points with real estate agents because they're busy and they have a lot going on. And so I looked at that and I thought, well, the number one thing I hear is no plumbing or HVAC shop will allow the sellers to do the work and then be paid at closing. And I'm like, okay, I'm used to that kind of stuff, so we can do that. And
that's huge because, sometimes people don't have the money till their house sells.
Right. And I get that. Especially in the economy we're in right now.
Oh my gosh, for real.
And then the other thing is agents don't have time to babysit contractors. So even my mold remediation guy, we all have super access. Yep. So all we need is just the information and we can go take care of it. We can take that right away from that real estate agent and just say, hey, you know what? We're here for you. We can take care of it. And
anything that you can do that makes the process easier for everybody.
Yeah, and great. And especially on your end, on what you guys do with mortgages and stuff, it makes it nice to know, hey, this is taken care of. We can move forward. Here's the invoicing. We just need to pay it at the end.
Absolutely,
at the closing. And it's been great.
Absolutely. Well, you guys give them a call. They do a great job, and we always recommend you when we have clients and things like that. So. Thanks so much for coming in. It was really interesting. Thank you, Troy.
You bet. Have a good day.
You too.